In this video, I'm going to be philosophizing on intrinsic properties and intrinsic processes, diving more deeper into why and what intrinsic properties and processes are what they are and why they are what they are. Intrinsic properties and processes consist of the internal characteristics that the well-defined, easier access to knowledge consists of specific objective, functional, and meaningful characteristics that define the properties of the intrinsic properties, always in relation to the processes of mind-body connections that are consuming knowledge in a specific direction and engaging knowledge consumption, perception, action, and or behavior as we're ingesting meaningful information within the sensors. Inputs of meaningful information are processed and sent to the preceptors, ingested into the direct and indirect precepts of self that we are engaging outputs voluntarily and able to develop our own meaningful interpretations within the surrounds of self, and which we can engage more creative volition as we're able to connect that to the external surrounding world environment and to engage creative processes and specifically intrinsic creativities, innovativeness, and inventivenesses that each have their own distinctions in being able to engage originality and different forms of being able to build on existing priors, as well as to build or create specific predicted properties in association with meaning interpretations that we can easier access knowledge to the functional characteristics as well as the meaningful properties internalized within those functional characteristics, the allowance for meaningfulness to develop in association with intrinsic properties. For example, the intrinsic properties of a pen concern the ink and the processes of being able to utilize that ink and to engage the written and recorded word. One can meaningfully develop the processes of perception, action, and behavior used to be able to communicate meaningful information one's reasoning on, and can ration their lettered vocab in the direction of a meaningful effect, communicating various complexities of one's thinking processes within the vehicles of communication that are the apparatuses sharpened with the point of a pen. One can engage a versatile vastness of range of specific mobile perception, action, or behavior, and draw with a pen the aesthetic properties that are intrinsic properties and could only be aesthetic properties in association to specific intrinsic characteristic processes that constitute those intrinsic properties and have specific characteristic qualities that allow us for meaningful communication in a specific direction of meaningful effect that is always domain specific, as to mean that we're engaging in a process that is bound to specific perception, action, and or behavior, and the boundness situated to existence is always meaningful in association to the contingencies of our perception, action, or behavior concerning specific intrinsic processes of associations connecting B and D and X component parts and processes in meaningful, connective, communicative, meaningful directions of effect. If it had no meaningful direction of effect, it could not constitute any functional properties or even objective properties. It would not be valid and it would not be meaningful. And oftentimes this also means that the randomness of the various characteristics are irrelevant and inherently lack the meaningfulness, as to mean that it is meaningless and can only be meaningful, connecting the functional properties within the intrinsic properties that allow it for the objectivity and the meaningfulness to develop in association with specific internally valid meaningful criterion satisfied to the internal validity and soundness of the conduct. So I want to say for this video, hope you have an awesome one and keep it available.